Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I thought by now you'd get sick of me.
No.
No? Okay. Well, thank you for having me here. Just a recap of what's happening out there. Are exchanges happening? Are investors moving their properties around? The answer is yes or no.
Yes.
Why?
Better returns.
Absolutely. They're looking for more cash flow, right? And they're not limited to here to California, are they, Bob?
No.
You can buy where?
Oregon.
Or anywhere in the country. What's the second reason?
More appreciation.
Redistribution of what?
Well,
Your equity. So you can do what? Appreciate with more. Let me give you an example. I have two properties. Identical properties, same street, same floor plan, nothing's different, except for one thing. This one is fully paid off. There's no debt on this one. Right? Nice, huh? This one is what? Mortgaged. It's leveraged. Two questions. Question number one, which property will appreciate faster? The one that's fully paid for or the one that's leveraged?
same.
It's the same. Why? Because equity has nothing to do with what? The level of appreciation, right? That's market dictated. So I guess that extra equity didn't do a whole lot for me in this property, did it? Not, at least not for appreciation. Second question, which property could I charge additional rent on? The one that's paid for or the one that's leveraged?
Same.
Since when did equity have anything to do with how much I can charge for rent? So which property, though this is fully paid for and this is leverage, what am I really getting a better return on? The one that's fully paid for in terms of the amount of equity that's in it, or the equity of the one that's leveraged? Right, and that's a motivation. And that's why investors are what? Re-leveraging their property so they can have additional properties that will also appreciate, that will also grow in what? Cash flow. And that's the reason why investors are doing this 1031 exchanges. I'm telling you, it's busy as far as investors are concerned because they're in the process of moving their assets around so they can position themselves for more of the future. How many of you think that the market's topped out? You know what I'm getting? I'm getting more and more information that we're going to see growth in the next 5 years. Do you know why?
Job creation.
Job increases, lower joblessness, but you know what else? They forgot to build. They forgot that people continue to move in. And when they slow down on building, guess what happens? The prices go up because there's less and less availability. So they're projecting a good 5 more years of a good, healthy market. Which I don't know about you, but I'm pretty excited about that. Maybe I'll retire in 5 years. Who knows? Okay, so the 3 basic exchanges are what? Closing simultaneously, number 1. Number 2, closing on a delayed basis, which means I can close my purchase within how many days from the time I close my sale? 180 days, but it's got a what? First 45 days? And you have to name the address of the property, also known as the identification period. A lot of people say, can I buy a property that is not on my list on day 45? The answer is yes, but it's not going to count for the exchange because it has to be on that list. Is there an accommodating accommodator? Yes, it's called tax fraud. You can't do it. It's illegal. And if you get caught, you can kiss your license goodbye. You can talk to the feds and to the judge, and you'll try to drag everybody in there with you so you can have a cellmate. The answer is no, you can't. You cannot change after day 45, that identification period. But then there's a third kind of exchange that a lot of investors have been forced to go to because there's not a lot of inventory. It's called a reverse exchange. And I want to talk about that because that's where we live right now. Not a tremendous amount of inventory. So what are investors doing in terms of moving their investment properties around to take advantage of re-leveraging all that equity to create better properties, more wealth for themselves? The answer is buy first. Why? Because if you are down to 45 days from the time your sale closes, does that give you a lot of time to acquire? Have you ever been to a produce store on a Saturday afternoon? It's very interesting. If you go late in the day, you know what's left over? The leftovers. Right? Is there anything, you pick up a carrot and the carrot goes, you know, I mean, it's all the stuff that people didn't want. And so many people kind of have treated the market in that fashion that there's just so many offers on one property, and frankly, there's just leftovers. I want something better. So they are waiting for opportunity to knock on their door because they're afraid to sell. They're afraid to back themselves in a corner with the 45 days to identify in a delayed exchange. So what are customers do? Uh-oh, somebody's in trouble. So what do customers do? They do a reverse exchange. They're going to buy first. Now here's the deal. I get phone calls from different people, different investors, on a weekly basis. And this is what they tell me. Phil, I was able to buy a property and close escrow a week ago. My realtor told me I can do a reverse exchange because I closed the purchase first. Can I sell now and exchange into the property I already own?
No, you have to set it up first.
That's right, you cannot do that. A reverse exchange is not necessarily buying first, because if you're going to acquire in any kind of an exchange, who has to be involved? The accommodator, right? The accommodator has to do what? Has to set up the exchange papers for the acquisition. Number two, what else does the accommodator do? Well, in a delayed exchange, the accommodator has to hold the money in between escrows. Because in a delayed exchange, we're going to give wiring instruction to the escrow officers, and I saw some very nice escrow officers in this place today, people that I work with. And what happens is that they're giving wire authorization to move the funds to the account that the accommodator is going to hold the money in. But not with a reverse exchange, because you're doing what first?
Purchasing.
You're purchasing first. So first question is, where's the money going to come from if you haven't sold anything? Oh, you're not going to come from me. There was nothing sold. You're buying first. So you're going to have to do what?
Borrow money.
Borrow money. From who? Bob.
12%.
12%. Amortized daily. There's no such thing as simple interest, right? Except when you're buying. Okay, so to do this, you have to have cash to do what? Acquire. Right? Or can you put a down payment down and bring a lender with you? Yeah, sure you can. Or the seller can carry back for you. Or you can get something called a hard money loan, swing loan, bridge loan. Can I go to my home and get a line of credit and borrow from my home to acquire my new replacement property with for my 1031 exchange?
Sure.
Sure I can, as long as I have some cash to float personally and bring additional money in through a lender, whether the seller's carrying back or I'm getting the money from some other way. I can even sell stock, whatever. I have to come up with cash and probably debt to acquire in escrow. Now, what happens is I can't just take title to the new purchase. What has to happen? The accommodator has to set up a holding corporation. Remember, on a delayed exchange, we hold your money. On a reverse exchange, the government wants us to hold your property. Now, we can hold one of two properties. The one that you're selling or the one that you're buying. Now, many would like us to hold the new property, except for one problem. Lender won't let that happen. In most cases, an institutional lender will not allow us to take title to your new property until you close your sale. By the way, how many days does the IRS allow you to close that sale after you first purchase your new replacement property? The answer is 180 days. From when? From the time we take title to the new purchase property. But your lender won't let us do that. So then the IRS gives us an alternative. And you know what that alternative is? We take title to the property you're going to sell the day before you close your purchase. That make sense? So the client has to deed what they're selling into this holding corporation. This holding corporation the day before the new purchase closes. So now they no longer what? Own the property. Will they continue to manage the property we're holding for them? Yes. Will they collect the rent? Absolutely. Will they take care of everything else regarding the property taxes? By the way, speaking of property taxes, is April the 10th coming pretty quickly? Don't forget to write that check.
It's the 15th, don't worry about it.
It's the 15th you're worried about. Well, you know, I got my tax return done last Friday, and I say this respectfully. I thought there were going to be 2 crucifixions that day. Okay, never mind. That's a bad. Okay, so anyway, the bottom line is that we're going to have to take title to the property they're selling the day before the purchase closes, so they're not holding what? 2 properties at the same time. Because if you acquire first without an accommodator and then sell something later, you can't buy the one you already own. The government won't let you do that. And that's why they have us held this property of yours that you're selling, of which you have to relinquish the ownership to this corporation the day before your new purchase. And as soon as that property goes into that corporation, you have 180 days to do what? Close the sale. That sale must be closed within 180 days, beginning the day you relinquish the ownership to it. Now, like I said before, the client has to maintain the property, collect the rent, pay the mortgage, do everything, take care of the tenant, do everything they would normally do. The only difference is they don't have ownership to the property anymore. So we're kind of leasing it back to them in a sense. So what happens? They have a buyer. They close the sale. What do we do with the funds that comes from the sale of the property they're relinquishing? The answer is, well, what normally happens on a sale? All the closing costs, right? You're going to have to pay the commissions, the escrow, the title insurance, the transfer tax, the recording fees. And now, but they had to put money into a purchase from their pocket. So the government will allow us to reimburse the client any money they took out of their bank account or utilized to purchase the new property, the one they were purchasing. So they're allowed to be reimbursed on that, on a reverse exchange, which is very nice. And then secondly, if they had gotten a bridge loan, a swing loan, a line of credit, those are allowed to be paid off from the proceeds of the sale. Does that make sense? So and also, if there's money left over, we can do a principal pay down on the new loan for the new purchase. The goal is to acquire, like any exchange, for what? Equal or more. That's the bottom line. And it's the same true with the reverse exchange. Does that make sense at all?
Yes.
Okay, next. The motivation for doing this is, number one, opportunities knocking. There's a beautiful opportunity to buy a good property. The seller's motivated. It's under market value. There's very little deferred maintenance on the building. I want this building. Because if opportunity's knocking on my door, how long can I wait? Not in this market very long. Because it'll leave my door and go knock on his door. And I'm going to lose the property. So I need to what? Move quickly. And that's the purpose of setting up the reverse exchange, to not lose a property I really, really want that's going to be good for me. That'll increase my cash flow, my appreciation, blah, blah, blah. Number two, the second reason why I want to do a reverse exchange is because I'm just so afraid that I won't find what I need in that 45 days on a delayed exchange. On a delayed exchange, I have to identify my replacement property in 45 days. I don't want to settle for something I don't want, because the purpose of the exchange is to what? Create additional cash flow, appreciation, additional tax write-offs, diversify my cash. So I'm not putting it all in one basket. But if I don't find the right property, what's going to happen? I'm either going to pay taxes or I'm going to go into something I don't want. Do you know how many people have said to me, I open a lot of exchanges nationally every month. And I've got to tell you something. I've had people come back to me and say, I regret I ever sold. I should have kept what I had because it was better than what's out there right now. And that's a sad commentary. And that's why an investor will do a reverse exchange. They'll wait until they find the right property. Maybe opportunity won't knock on the door and they have to move quickly, but they're afraid to sell and then buy because they're afraid they won't find what they're looking for. Here's the third reason to do a reverse exchange. I don't know if this ever happens to you, but you have two escrows at the same time. Two investment properties. One they're selling, the other one they're buying. They're closing their sale in 2 weeks. They're closing their purchase in 3 weeks. Life is good, except for one problem. The buyer falls out. Does it ever happen?
Yes.
Wow. I've been in real estate since 1982. It really does happen, doesn't it? What do? You've got money, earnest money deposit into an acquisition that you really want. Your buyer just fell out of the property that you're selling them. What do? You do a reverse exchange. You get that line of credit, the swing loan, the bridge loan, whatever, hard money. You acquire the new property first, and then find another buyer and close the sale within
180 days.
180 days. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's why investors are doing reverse exchanges. Those reverse exchanges, our reverse exchange department is really going crazy right now. It's very busy in that department because more and more investors are leaning on reverse exchanges. How much more do they cost? Oh, you know they cost more. $5,000. Used to. $7,000 for residential, $8,000 for commercial. That's a good price because my competitors are charging $12,000 and $14,000. Now the question is, why would I want to spend that much more money on a reverse exchange than I would on a delayed exchange?
Better give the money to the government.
Because it's a lot less than you're going to give to the government. But let me ask you a question, Bob. If I find the right property, would I pay an additional $5,000 more or $6,000 more to acquire it if it's the right property?
Every day of the week.
Every moment of the day, right? So why wouldn't I pay additional exchange fees to get the right property? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Absolutely. And that's what's motivating investors. They don't blink twice because the big picture is what? The new property that they really want. Because they know the key to their future for cash flow, appreciation, tax write-offs is what? Acquiring the right property. If you acquire the wrong property and then eventually you're going to resell it, how much is it going to cost you in closing costs and fees to sell that asset? A lot more than $5,000 or $6,000 more. Does that make sense? And that's the motivation behind the reverse exchange. Any questions regarding the reverse exchange? Yes, sir.
So the accommodator takes title to the property that's going to be sold?
Usually we take title to the property that's being sold unless they're going in all cash, or the lender will allow us to acquire the new property and we'll hold that in a holding corporation.
Well, my question is, who signs the listing agreement and purchase agreement?
You do everything like you normally do. We will change the papers with escrow to make sure that everything's right as far as the IRS is concerned. Remember, it's just a purchase and a sale. So you're just going to have to close the purchase first. Yes?
How about if the deal doesn't go through?
Oh, what happens if the sale doesn't go through? So the 180 days comes and goes. Now it's day 181. What we do is we have to deed the property back to the client. So now they're the proud owner of two properties, the one they already bought and the one they were trying to sell and it didn't work. Do they pay capital gains taxes because they have a failed exchange? The answer is no.
They didn't sell.
Why?
They didn't sell.
Because they never sold. But now they're the proud owners of the two properties. So they can eventually sell that other property to exchange for something else, but not the property they already have bought. Because you can't buy from yourself in a 1031 exchange. That make sense? Yes?
If you buy the property, is the seller going to wait for you for the 180 days?
Is it-
Buy first, okay?
Okay, so you're going to buy first.
Is the seller going to wait for you for that reverse exchange?
Well, no, remember, it's just a purchase. So you negotiate the longest escrow term you can. And then when you go to acquire, if you haven't closed the sale yet, that's when we set up the holding corporation and we take title to the property they're selling the day before they close the purchase. So seller doesn't have to wait. That's the beauty of the exchange. When they go to buy, they don't have to have the seller of the property they're buying to wait. Usually it's the other way around. They want the buyer to wait so they don't start the 45 days. Because as soon as they close the sale on a delayed exchange, the 45 days begins. So usually if there's any stalling, it's on the sale end, not on the purchase end. Yes?
Bill, how about in the scenario
Yes.
where you acquire the property ahead of time, but it's not the value, it's lesser than the one that you own? Can you do a concurrent? Can you also
Buy a second one.
buy another second?
That's a great question. There's something called a hybrid exchange. Does anybody know what a hybrid car is? Does anybody have like a Prius?
Yeah.
It runs on what? Gas and electric. It runs on two kinds of energy. A hybrid exchange says that I'm going to acquire this first property through a reverse exchange, but it's not enough. So what I'm going to do is set up a hybrid exchange, which means we're going to do a reverse exchange, buy the purchase first and then close the sale, but before the sale closes, I'm going to set up a delayed exchange as well for the additional cash. So now I have an additional 180 days to acquire my second property. Does that make sense?
You
And-
have additional.
Yeah. Hybrids are really, in fact, I'm working on one really big deal right now. He's buying properties in Needles. It's a big resort. So if you're ever going to go that direction, he's going to want you to stop by his resort. But what happens is that he's selling a property in Santa Monica. It's going to be a delayed exchange for his big Needles property. But then he has to sell 2 more properties he owns in Arizona. So it'll all work within the hybrid function, which is really good. It gives you the flexibility. Is it going to cost you more? Absolutely. Is it worth it? Depends. Is it the right property? There's no thinking twice about it if it's the right property you're acquiring, and it's going to really make a lot of money for you. Any other questions before we end? Because I think we're getting close to my time. I can feel them pull me. Phil? Yeah, spoke too much. Yes, sir.
You delivery information. What is the risk, the possible effect on the seller and buyer?
Of doing an exchange?
Right.
There really isn't any risk. For you to do an exchange, the government mandates that you bring somebody to escrow with you on both what you're selling and what you're buying. And who is that somebody? Yeah, me. There's nobody else who does this in the world except me. No, I'm just kidding. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to let you know. You have to bring an accommodator. Whether you're buying through a reverse exchange or whether you're selling. Sometimes you're going to go into an escrow on a purchase first, but you're not sure. You might be able to close your sale in time to do a concurrent or a delayed exchange. And that's why we're going to want to wait for 2 weeks before anything closes to see if you can do that. Because if we can save you money, why not, right? I'd rather spend $750 than $7,000. So we'll wait to 2 weeks, and 2 weeks before anything closes, then you'll know which exchange that you need to do. But you always have to have your accommodator with you in each sale and each purchase. If not, it's not a 1031 exchange. I cannot tell you how many phone calls I get on a weekly basis where people call me and say, please call the escrow officer and set up my 1031 exchange quickly. Not a problem. When does escrow close? Yesterday. It's too late, baby. Anybody remember Carole King? No. Remember that song she used to sing? It's too late. As far as but of course there's always tax fraud. No, you don't want to go there. That's wrong. That's wrong. One more question. Yes.
Do you provide some kind of consultation for those clients who are interested in the 1031 exchange?
Yes, absolutely. Most of the time, 99% of the time, they call me, I explain everything to them, and they feel very comfortable after they get all the facts, because now they can make an intelligent decision as to what's best for them. Now, I've got information that you can actually email to your client on specifically the reverse exchange, the delayed exchange, and the hybrid exchange. And if you want me to email that to you, here's my business card. I'm going to leave a bunch of them up here. Shoot me an email and say, Phil, send me the information on the different kinds of exchanges, and I'll email it to you. Give it to your client. It has my contact information. Have them call me. There is no obligation for them to use our company. I'm just happy to share the information with them.
Do you have Chinese version?
Do I have Chinese version? I cannot tell you how many people have told me, I will do the translation for you. I'm still waiting. Can you do it?
I can help.
You can help. You just got to make sure it's right. Because I can't proofread it.
We
Pauline.
will have a group of Chinese, Chinese.
I would love it. By the way, don't forget Carpa, right? Okay. Thank you for having me here today. I hope this was helpful. Thank you. The reverse exchange is really a big deal in this marketplace where there's very little inventory, and it seems like everybody wants to do a reverse exchange. So thank you, thank you, thank you.